Here's our ADHD on full
Quirky.
display.
No, I'm just kidding.
Well, there's our warm welcome.
It was a
our
little
quick banter.
according to our script. Maybe
Well,
other normal people could sit down and just have a conversation,
yeah,
but we
not.
definitely have to have scripts to keep
Yeah.
us on track.
Yeah.
So
Here we
just
are.
get used to hearing the little flutter of paper behind.
Paper.
Welcome to No Couch Required. 2 therapists, too many feelings, not enough chill.
This is basically the podcast version of your most validating group chat. If it were run by 2 therapists with zero bullshit, big hearts, and a knack for turning emotional chaos into conversation.
We're unpacking healing, mental health, and all the messiness in between with humor, honesty, and maybe even a little ethically sourced tea from the therapy room. No couch
Or copay
required.
Hi, I'm Kayla Judd, a licensed marriage and family therapist. I specialize in complex trauma and PTSD. And I primarily work with couples navigating relationship conflict and the lasting impacts of childhood trauma using emotionally focused therapy and somatic EMDR.
And I'm Ashley Wright, a licensed clinical social worker. I also specialize in complex trauma and PTSD, and I work with individuals healing from childhood, relational, and sexual trauma to help them reconnect with themselves in a grounded, embodied way.
Before we dive in, a quick disclaimer. Even though we're therapists, this podcast isn't therapy and it's not a replacement for professional mental health care. Listening doesn't create a therapist-client relationship.
If you're struggling, we encourage you to reach out to a licensed mental health professional in your area. And if you're in crisis in the U.S., you can dial or text 988 for immediate support.
Okay, let's get into today's episode.
Okay, today we're going to talk about therapists not all being created equal. As in any profession, we have some therapists who are really good at what they do and other therapists who aren't as good at what they do, and some who are just really bad or unethical or harmful.
Right. There is a spectrum.
Yes.
And I think that for both of us, we kind of have a little bit of a soapbox here. I think this is something that you and I both have a lot of passion around. I think that you've had more poor experiences that kind of put you in that position. And I think I'm just a really big stickler for rules.
Yeah, as am I, which is why I get so up in arms when I see people doing something wrong. I'm like, what are you doing? That's not allowed.
Well, I think it's confusing for us because when we are in school, and I don't know if this is, if the difference between therapists has a lot to do with like the kind of education that we got, but I can't tell you how many times they brought it up over and over again in the 2 years that I was in school. That was like, don't have sex with your clients, guys. 0% of the time, ever.
Yeah.
I don't care if it's been 7 years or 50. You never have sex with a client.
Yeah.
Right. And yet, guess what happens? It happens.
And I feel
probably more frequently than people know.
Yeah. And I feel like every time that got said, everyone in the room just kind of laughs because it's like, well, duh.
Why would you do
Like,
that?
why would we do that? But I have been shooketh at how often that happens.
Yeah.
I really feel like I was maybe naive for a long time in my life, probably about a lot of things. But this especially really just kind of was one of those people that thought that like therapists were all just like so good and kind and like doing the best work and like making mistakes, but like coming from the best place. Then I've had this like whatever, come to Jesus experiences that I'm like,
just like, don't meet your celebrities because
honestly,
you'll be really disappointed.
I'm like, damn it, they're just people.
Yeah.
And people kind of suck.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think it really proves that point, right? And I think I also came into this profession having that kind of view. And over time, I kept hearing this same thing over and over again, which is people kind of end up becoming therapists to heal their own trauma, which is kind of a scary thought, you know, that we've got people who are really struggling who come into this, and unless they're actually doing that work to heal themselves, you're not going to end up with a great therapist, I think. You know, one of the things that they told us in my program was, we can't force you to go to therapy, but we highly, 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 highly encourage you to go.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't, because I don't know, it's just kind of ironic for people to go into school thinking that they're just fine.
Yeah.
But I think anybody who wants to become a therapist should require themselves to go to therapy,
Yeah.
And if you're going to do couples therapy, also do some couples
Yeah.
therapy.
Nothing else to know what it's like to be on the other side, to
Yeah.
be sitting on the couch instead of the chair.
Well, and I'll tell you that I learned 50% of what I know from school and 50% from going to therapy.
And I will say, as much as I love my profession of social work, I would say what I learned in school was less than 50%.
Oh,
And what I
yeah.
learned in like real practice was much more. But I think
Okay.
that this topic feels important for us
Mm.
to be very real about because if you've ever had a bad experience with therapy, we really want to emphasize that like therapy is not one size fits all. And if you do want to go to therapy but have had bad experiences, we don't want you to give up on that.
Yeah.
So, why this matters? I, at this point in my career, I tend to get people on my caseload who have done a lot of therapy. And sometimes that therapy that they've done is great and helpful and they're ready for the next thing or the therapist left or whatever. But oftentimes they've had poor experiences in
Yeah.
therapy. I'm glad that they keep wanting to give it a chance, but just think it's important to note that like sometimes a bad experience in therapy is about that fit or that
Yes.
therapist and not necessarily about therapy overall.
Yeah. Well, and again, we're talking about a spectrum, right? Like we can be on the one side where it's just not a good fit. And we can start to sneak into sort of, I mean, there's kind of different bad things, right? Like there's like maybe they don't have the education or they don't specialize in what you are needing, or it can get into sort of the ethical side of things where that's kind of the thing that I think we kind of label as like bad,
Yeah.
right? Bad therapist
Yeah.
versus like a poor fit or even the therapist. Maybe, I don't know if it's just being kind of naive or sort of overzealous.
Totally.
I just had somebody come in that said they went to a therapist that they just felt like they didn't really have an expertise on this certain issue and that they wanted to just fix them. And I'm like, yeah, that's really not the greatest approach,
Yeah.
right? So there is a spectrum on what we're talking about here. And when we're talking about therapists that maybe we don't fit with, keep trying. I mean, I always suggest to people do several consultations, do 3 to 5 with that many therapists. If you can find that many that you feel like you would click with, and then just talk to them on the phone. Most therapists, if they don't, then I don't know if I'd even go to somebody who wouldn't do a
That's what
15 minutes consultation with me. So do the 15-minute consultation, see what fits, that feels right. And then I tell people too, I don't know if I'm kind of getting into stuff. Like if you don't feel like there's a good fit within the 3 to 5 sessions, it's time to move on. So anyways,
we don't need to let that drag on.
all of this matters because we therapy can work and therapy can really help if we have a good fit. 50% of the therapist's job is to connect with you. And if that connection isn't there, the rest of it probably won't work.
Yeah. Yeah. A good fit is everything. And so we want to really, today we're really going to focus on like spotting a shitty therapist. And when we say a bad or shitty therapist, we're talking about somebody who tends to cross ethical boundaries, right? These are the things that are going to scream like run. Not just like, hey, maybe let's have a conversation about shifting style or maybe I need a different fit. This is like somebody who is not doing a good job and is crossing ethical lines.
Or just not great. I mean, there's some things that I would think kind of fit that maybe aren't unethical, but I think we've got that on here. We'll talk about it.
Okay.
Therapy isn't a one size fits all. There are different types of therapies. We are going to do an episode on that because I think it's important for people to understand the difference between those things and why there's certain ones that work better than others due to like what it is that you're wanting to work on, who you are, and then just research based.
So that all being said, let's get into some of the red flags about how to spot a shitty therapist.
And this first one is I was starting to allude to this one already, which is they talk too much about themselves. And I hope I probably, my clients, if they decide to listen to this, I'm like, sometimes I might walk that line just a tad, which I'm always trying to reel it back in because I've had a therapist who talked too much about themselves and therapy ended. Like I kept having these experiences where I would go in and I'd walk away being like, well, I guess maybe next time we'll get to what I wanted to talk about.
Not a
And
good
that
sign.
happened for probably at least 2 months. So,
That's not a good sign. I have also had an experience of having a therapist share way too much about themselves, much too personally, and it really shifted the dynamic too much. Then it was like, "Mm, I actually don't want to know that much about you."
yeah.
And then it made it difficult to go in and feel like it was an unbiased space for me.
Yeah. And maybe I should clarify when I share what we know as therapists is that if we're going to share something personal, it needs to be therapeutic. And so I really try and check myself with that. And so
Mhm.
I'm always hoping that I'm not going too far over. But I had a really funny experience in school that I will share.
Okay. Let's hear
Mhm.
it.
It was probably a really good lesson for me to learn as like, early on
Mhm.
as there was, and it was I think it was a first session with a new client, not my very first, but it was probably in that week, and the way that it works at school, at least my school, was that the therapists that were moving out into their internships were transferring their clients to the new therapist at the school's clinic, and so both therapists would go in with the client, and I remember that I was really nervous. And I did try to connect with this client by sharing some personal stuff.
Mhm.
And bless her heart. I mean, this was just the client's personality.
Mhm.
But she was like, listen, I'm not trying to be mean, but I don't give a shit about you. And I was like wide eyed. And I can't even remember. I think I just blinked out. But after the session, the other therapist was like, are you okay? Like, do you want to go into one of the rooms and just talk for a minute?
Oh my
I was
gosh.
like, "No, I think I'm okay." She was right. I did talk too much about myself.
That's so
Right.
funny.
Oh, anyways, that's my little story. I learned quite quickly. Like,
Yeah.
I really I mean, I was nervous, but I have to check myself.
Yeah. And I think in any of these things we're not looking for perfection from therapists because I also self-disclose probably more than other therapists do, but it's usually I do try to be really careful to make sure that there's a purpose to it, right? And
Yes.
I make sure to
Yes.
always bring the conversation back to the reason I'm sharing this is, right? Like
Yes, I do that
to
too.
paint a picture or to relate or there's usually a therapeutic purpose to
Yeah.
it.
Sometimes I'm just trying to give an example because sometimes when I just try and come up with like something random, it just doesn't hit the same as if it's
Mhm.
like, okay, here's this personal example that I have, and this is what I mean
Yeah.
by what I'm saying.
But I've
So,
heard of situations where like you're saying, like I went to therapy and my therapist spent the whole time talking,
mhm.
right? Or I ended up being the emotional support for my therapist, right? Like some really
Yeah,
dramatic examples of like really, really bad therapy.
yeah.
That's not just like, oh, I maybe like talked a little bit too much in that episode, in that session. I can't get
Getting
those
those
words straight.
mixed up.
But that it was, like, really shifting the entire dynamic of that therapeutic relationship in
Yeah,
a really unhealthy and
yeah.
harmful way sometimes.
Yeah. So watch out for this. Again, like I want people to know 3 to 5 sessions. If
Mhm.
these things are already happening, it's time to move on. I don't think you need to fork out money and time to being a therapist for a therapist.
Yeah, and this is probably something that's kind of subjective. Some people maybe don't mind a little bit more sharing from their therapist, and some people
Mhm.
really don't want any sharing from their
Yeah.
therapist, and so it's okay, like, whatever you're comfortable with
Yeah. And
is
giving
okay.
you're welcome to give that feedback too. I've had
Totally.
to let some like if I see a couple, or an individual and they're doing therapy with another therapist, I always encourage them to give the feedback.
Yeah,
Give the feedback and if they don't take the feedback, it's a good sign to move on,
yeah.
you know.
Absolutely. All right. Crossing boundaries, oversharing. We kind of talked about,
Mhm. Talk about
but
that.
dual relationships, inappropriate comments. I think we could probably get on a really big soapbox about
Oh
dual
yeah, we've got to
relationships
be
because
careful about that.
that's one thing I think, and even my understanding of like our code of ethics and, DOPL, the Department of
Boy, what does P
whatever.
mean? Professional and licensing
Yeah, but
executive.
what's occupational and
Oh,
professional
yeah.
licensing, right? Our licensing board, they really, the dual relationships is one of those things they get a lot of reports on from what
Mhm.
I've heard.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So
Interesting.
dual
I
relationships
mean,
means basically that like your therapist shouldn't have any other type of relationship with you. This gets a little stickier in like really rural areas, but in
yes.
most places you shouldn't have a different type of relationship with your therapist other
Yeah.
than therapy. That should be the only place you have a relationship is like
Yes.
50 to 60 minutes in their office or,
Yeah.
whatever the setting is. That's it.
Like hard line. I think in rural communities, it can get sticky, and therapists with other therapists can get really sticky.
For sure.
But like, I still think that when it comes to dual relationships in those areas, there can be a lot that you can do,
Yeah.
and that your therapist, like, keep in mind that it is your therapist's job
Yeah.
to hold that line. It
Y-
is not the
mm,
client's. And again, that's something that was like nailed into my brain in
Yeah.
school.
Yeah. Because, a therapist who crosses that boundary, us as therapists are like, oh, that wasn't okay. But people who aren't therapists or maybe don't know might be like, oh, that was kind of cool. Oh, that was fun to like
Hmm.
see my therapist or have this kind of connection with them.
Yeah.
And not everyone maybe realizes that that's not okay.
Yeah.
And even if you as the client are okay with it, that doesn't really matter because it is the therapist's responsibility to
Yeah.
maintain that ethical standard or guideline.
That boundary. Yeah. So if your therapist is asking you if you want to meet up for coffee, or
Adding you on social media.
yeah, like these are not, like, even those boundaries are not great. And I'll tell you that, like, it can be difficult. Like, I have one client in particular that I really like, and our therapeutic relationship had to end because they moved out of state.
Mm,
Due to like the circumstances that she was going through, I really wanted to still be there for her.
yeah.
And I think just outside of therapy, her and I would be able to be friends. And so I have gone to lengths of like, how can I make this work, Google? And every time it's like, nope, nope, nope. And the thing that I read that really stuck out to me is that the research shows that people who have crossed that line into like creating a friendship have regretted it,
Mm,
because it's like, what was this?
yeah.
Like, there's something, yeah.
Yeah. There's so many aspects to that. I feel like we could do an entire like 7 episode series on
Oh,
dual
yeah.
relationships.
Maybe
So don't
someday
want
we
to get like
will.
too much into it, but this definitely would, any type of like romantic relationship with your
Mhm.
clients, being friends on social media, hanging out outside of therapy, even like I even get uncomfortable texting too much with clients,
Yeah.
right? Like even my text communication with them, I really try to keep strictly to like scheduling
Yes.
and very little else because it can get, especially with those clients I really like and could
Mhm.
totally see myself being friends with.
Yeah.
You probably shouldn't be working for your therapist. You probably shouldn't be like hiring your clients. Like there are these like boundaries that we just don't cross because of the nature of the therapeutic relationship and the power dynamic that is established
Yeah.
in that
Yeah.
relationship.
And I would just, for the therapists that are listening, right? As somebody who might be the client in those situations, those are things to watch out for, that just because you're also a therapist, um, doesn't we don't need these lines to get blurred. Like,
Yeah.
I would keep them just straight across.
Mhm.
Like, it's always about that therapeutic relationship, and that always is the priority. Even if the therapeutic relationship has ended, still a line.
Watch for that.
Inappropriate comments, I mean, these are things to watch out for. Like, if you I mean, some of the things I in school, one of the students that we had there ended up getting suspended for like 7 weeks because they had made sexist comments towards a client, right? So, like, sexism, racism, bigotry, like any of those types of comments
Yeah.
are something to watch out for. I think it's always good to call your therapist out on that, talk to him about it.
Which can be really, really hard to do, again,
Yeah,
because of
it
the power
can be.
dynamic, but if you feel like that's something you can do, absolutely do that. I think because of also the nature of our world right now, I think it's safe to say too that, like, your therapist making religious pushes, political pushes, those are definitely
Yes.
boundary crossing, right? Like,
Yeah.
they don't have to share your political ideals, but they should be able to hold space for them.
Yes.
And it gets really tricky in this day and age with how, like, tense everything is.
Yes.
But as far as politics and religion, I have had clients who've shared that, therapists in the past have pushed, in the middle of like a faith crisis or faith transition, pushed them to like stay in the religion and pray
Mhm.
more and do these things, or the opposite, have pushed them to leave. And
Yeah.
that's bringing our own bias into that
Mhm.
situation, and it's not okay.
Yeah. It's a therapist's job to make sure that they help you find the path that's right for you. And if you're feeling like, you get to bring in your politics, you get to bring in your religion, but the therapist doesn't get to do that. And
Yeah.
so, unless they're walking alongside you with where you're at in those things, we've got a problem.
Yeah. Yeah. I
So,
think there's a lot of ways that therapists can probably cross boundaries, but those are some of
Yeah.
the main things that come to mind.
Yeah, we have to watch out, like, we can get with our own beliefs and stuff, our job is to be able to really leave those things at the door and regulate them. If there's a disagreement, my client doesn't need to know that I disagree with them.
Mhm.
They just need to know that I care,
Yeah.
and I just feel like this is so the thing that I feel is so human that I really would love for more people to be able to take in. There's been a lot of, political stuff happening over the last week, and so I've had clients bring in some of that stuff and
Yeah.
trying to teach them what it means to regulate emotionally so that they
Mhm.
can have more of these open conversations and dialogue with people that are important to them. And to me, that's my priority is let's keep these connections that are important to you by working on being able to listen and hear people and understand.
Yeah, and disagree appropriately. I
So,
think the last thing I have to say on this, because I work a lot with sexual trauma, it infuriates me to no end the amount of clients that I've had come who say that a past therapist has either directly or indirectly blamed them for their assault or their
ah,
abuse. And also, honestly, sometimes I've heard, been very explicit, like, well, why were you drinking? Right? Like, if your therapist is in any way insinuating your abuse or an assault is your fault, you don't have to have a conversation with that therapist. I give you full permission to leave and
mhm.
never go back because it is
Get up and
not
walk out.
okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
That
You do not need to finish that session.
or if you do, you don't have to go back. Those kinds of things have blown my mind that I've
Yeah.
heard.
I've heard those same things too, and some of these people who just bring in that baggage who are already believing that about
Yeah.
themselves and having to as a therapist, help them correct that thinking, let alone being with a therapist that
Reinforced it.
just reinforces it.
It's so
That's
harmful.
so
Oh my
harmful.
gosh, it makes me so angry. Okay, we have to move on. Oh, look, maybe this is where we could have talked about it. Lack of cultural humility or dismissing client
Yeah, I
experiences.
mean, we're talking about these things, we're
Yeah.
hitting them.
Oh, pushing their own agenda. Just like
We've talked about,
bypassed
yeah,
all the script. Fine.
we're
Look at
just
us.
smart. All I mean, lack of cultural humility, this is just another thing that we're taught in school is to make sure that if you've got a client coming in that you might not have any understanding to their culture, their religion, um, you know, their lived experience. It's really important for us to get consultation with that, or is to go as far as ask the client to really kind of educate us on some level of
Mhm.
what is this experience like for you? This is something elephant in the room. We're not the same race. We're not
Yeah.
from the same culture. I really want to understand your experience.
Yeah.
If that isn't happening, if and maybe that's not always to what we're there to work on. It's something to look at, but
But I think those kinds of things underline a lot of people's lived experience, right? If
mhm,
there is racism, if there's like sexism, if there's
yeah,
ableism, like those things are undercurrents that are always kind of buzzing in the background that I
yeah,
think is good to acknowledge. Like, hey, I see this part of you and I'm recognizing my limitations and
yeah,
also like here with you,
yeah,
right? I'm going to listen. I'm going to be humble and not anticipate that I know everything about your lived experience, even when it is something that I have a lot of training in, right? If it's not something, even if I had something I have lived experience in, my experience is going to be different than your
yeah,
experience.
yeah. Just opening up that door. I think sometimes if that's something that you're already carrying, be on some level normalize the interactions.
Mhm.
And I think it's helpful as therapists to really open that door so that
Yeah.
they don't have to
Yes.
hey, I'm noticing this. This is just you walking in here. It's here. Let's
Yeah.
talk about it.
Yeah.
So I mean, we're kind of talking about some of the green flags, I guess, of what's
Yeah.
good for a therapist to do. And so if these things aren't happening, right, sometimes it's not about the negative things that they do, but the absence of the positive things that are needed
Yeah.
that can be kind of
Yeah.
maybe a red flag.
And if they're outwardly making it an unsafe space
Yeah.
around those topics.
Which kind of addresses this idea of what it means to dismiss a client's experiences, right?
Yeah.
Making sure that I mean, this again is where therapist bias can come in. My experience as your therapist doesn't matter. This is all about what you've experienced, whether it's right or wrong or good or bad, whatever anybody wants to label that. That's your experience. And we're going to talk about it.
Yeah.
We're going to help you, you know, recognize maybe some areas that need to be worked on. If we do kind of have some perspective that isn't helpful or healthy to us, we're going to help you figure that out. We're going to call it out
Yeah.
in the ways that we need to. But generally speaking, your experience is valid because that's what happened.
Yeah.
It's like what
It
happens,
is what
right? You can't
happened.
like, I tell people if your arm is broken and the bone's sticking out and somebody, including me, comes to you and says, well, no, it's not, right? Like, I guess maybe the better analogy is if it's broken, but there isn't a bone sticking out,
Sure.
right? It's just like, well, it's not broken,
Yeah.
but
It
like it
looks
is,
fine.
you know?
Yeah.
And no matter how much I try and convince you that your arm's not broken, like that doesn't change the fact that it is.
Yeah. And the pain is still there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because even if maybe we think that the arm is broken, even though it might be fractured or sprained or something, like I'm trying to bring in this aspect of like when things aren't helpful or healthy.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, I totally hear you. And that's what I often tell clients is when they're like, well, I don't know if this is fair for me to say or do or whatever. I'm like, let go of the judgment of whatever it's fair or not fair. But like, if this is how you feel, it's how you feel. It's
let's
just the
talk about
reality.
it.
Whether it's fair or not doesn't really matter at this point. It's what you feel. And we have to address what is
Yeah.
actually here.
Yes, we have to give acknowledgement to it, whether it's like right or wrong.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Not respecting consent in therapy.
Oh, yes.
I'm really, really careful about this
Well,
as,
especially with
as a
somebody who
therapist.
works with sexual trauma, you really do.
Yeah.
I don't think I have that same like need to kind of be on top of that.
Mm,
Um, I do when I do somatic therapy, I tend to want my clients to close their eyes.
mhm.
And that's when I do watch that. I'll always ask, do you feel comfortable closing your eyes?
Yeah.
I don't think that there's other interventions that I necessarily like EMDR, I'm always asking like, hey, let me know if it's too much, if we need to slow down.
Yeah.
I did have a client give me feedback at one point that they didn't want to do EMDR,
Mhm.
and I was like, that's okay. That might mean that our relationship needs to end because this is kind of how I approach it.
Mhm.
You know, I mean, she did end up eventually coming back and wanting to do it
Yeah.
because it clicked finally. You talk more about this because I feel like you
Yeah.
probably have a lot more going on
I
with
mean,
this
I
need.
I do have a lot to say on that, I guess, and that because of the demographic I work with, I'm also like a very timid people pleaser, and this is just how I am like in life in general. Is I'm like, "Oh, I don't
Hmm.
want you to be uncomfortable. Like,
Hmm.
let's not if you don't." And that's actually been sometimes problematic and then I don't push clients quite enough and I'm working on
To
that
challenge
balance.
them.
But I feel very passionate about this power dynamic that exists between the therapist and the client. And most of the clients that I work with are chronic people pleasers and have likely experienced sexual trauma or some kind of abuse in their life,
Hmm.
and they don't have any sense of internal power or
Yeah.
agency or personal authority. And my goal in anything I do is to help build that up. And so
Yeah.
if I'm pushing, this is what we're going to do today, it removes that empowerment from them. And
Yeah.
so I think I have a handful of clients and have, in the history of my work who don't like that I make them choose and make them make decisions, but I think it's good for them. And I like to offer options, or I sometimes will give, a suggestion or give guidance of like, this is what I think we could do. But how do you feel about that? Is today even a good day to get into this
Hmm.
topic or to
Yes.
do this kind of deep processing that can be overwhelming or kind of a lot sometimes, right?
And that really allows clients to check in with themselves and
Yeah. Yeah. So
yeah.
I'm really big on that. And I think, not everyone's going to be quite as like sensitive to that as I am. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. But I think if a therapist is coming in and saying, well, like this is just what we have to do and this is what you need, and disregarding
Yeah.
the client's hesitations or questions or fears about it
Yeah.
and just saying like the overly like tough love of like, well, this is just what you need and like we're
I'm
gonna
gonna tell
do
you.
it. Right.
Yeah.
It can feel very like white coat. It can feel really clinical. And I don't think it really provides a good environment for healing. I,
Yeah.
I don't think it helps.
Well, part of what we're supposed to do is model those healthy relationships and telling somebody what they need when really they kind of know. We might know that they need something, but that doesn't mean that we push them off the cliff.
Yeah.
You know, they've got to hook themselves in and
Well, I mean,
jump
and
over
there's
with
like
a rope.
there's psychology behind that too. And like if you are forcing and pushing something on someone, they're going to resist it.
Right.
But if you give it space and say like, hey, these are options, but we don't have to do any of them,
Mm.
then that little spark of intuition in them is going like, oh, actually, this actually does sound good.
They
And maybe I acknowledge that I'm scared to do that or I'm not sure I want to, but like, this is probably what I should
uh,
do. And I didn't have to push that. Then that was them using their own, sense of
intuition.
self, their intuition, and they're participating then
Yeah.
in their own like
Yeah.
therapeutic process.
I always tell my clients, like, this is a tortoise versus hare situation. And we're never going to be the hare because the hare never wins. Therapy is a very slow process. And, unless I've got a client that's coming in with the ground running, I mean, sometimes they're there and I actually have to be the one to slow them down. I'm like, I
Yeah.
know you want this to change, but like, I also know what the brain's capable of.
Yeah.
We got to slow it down,
Yeah. Absolutely.
So that slow process, I always find that when we find the right pace, the client eventually gets there
Absolutely.
and I don't have to force it.
Yeah. It
The brain
shouldn't.
wants to heal, the body wants to heal. It's going to get you there.
Yeah. I don't think it should feel forced. So,
Yeah.
again, it can be a conversation that someone
Mhm.
has with their therapist and feeling like, I don't think that this modality is feeling right for me right now, whatever.
Yeah.
But again, a lot of it comes down to the therapist's response to you
Right.
bringing up a concern or a fear
Yeah.
about any particular intervention.
Yeah. I had one client in particular that just like the part stuff, I
Mm.
can't do the part stuff. It's
Hmm.
just weird. Right. So you just take a different approach.
Yeah, you just
And
shift,
that's
and that's
fine.
that's okay.
Yeah.
But then where it's not a good fit or maybe even potentially a red flag is where they're like, "No, this is what we have to do. No,
Yeah.
this is what you need."
Yeah.
Like, maybe that comes down to not being a good fit because they don't do other modalities, right?
Hmm.
Maybe it's not a good fit because they are not listening to what
Yes.
you need.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you can ask more questions because if this is their modality, that's kind of what I was saying before. Like
Yeah.
at that time, my trauma approach was EMDR.
Yeah.
And I didn't really have any other like approaches that I felt strong in
Yeah.
to really provide that for her.
Right. And that's
So,
expressing a limitation, which I think is a green flag for a therapist, right? But it's all about the intention, right? There's nuance in all of it.
right.
It's all about like, does it feel like they're power struggling with you,
Yeah.
or does it feel like they just really don't? That's just not a good fit because their style just isn't what you're looking for.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just not clicking.
Yeah.
I want to add into this that this can really take on a harmful approach. Like we've kind of already said that, but the other sort of angle that I see is that I've had so many clients come in who have further been traumatized by the pace of the therapist.
Yeah.
Like one right now is, I mean, I would even go as far as to say that non-therapists, like I have a client that I'm working with right now who had like this different approach and this person just opened up Pandora's box and then was just like, oh my gosh, oopsie, sorry, bye. And literally like ghosted him, you know? And so, oh my gosh, I've heard that story so many times, whether it's
So,
with a therapist or not.
so many times.
I guess I want to just really hammer this that if your therapist is going too quickly, it's not going to work. It's going to traumatize you more. It's putting you in a situation where you're not able to handle these things. And they're basically forcing you to unpack all of it
Yeah.
at once. And it really, like, I think it, like, for lack of better words, kind of makes you crazy, right?
Yeah.
Because all of a sudden you're incredibly dysregulated.
Yeah.
You're not functioning. And I mean, this one client ended up in the hospital,
That's so sad.
So watch the pace. If
Yeah.
it feels too fast, if your therapist isn't addressing the pace, like,
Yeah.
just keep that in mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my gosh, that makes me so
Yes.
I might feel my body is like tense because I get so passionate about that.
Yeah.
But we should probably move on. Next red flag, being unprofessional in showing up late, being distracted in
Distracted.
session, forgetting details constantly.
Mhm. I mean, give me a little grace on this one. This one,
For
forgetting
sure.
sometimes
For sure.
is
But
hard.
like there are some like basic things we should be generally
Yes.
remembering about our clients, right? You get a new
Yeah.
client, it does take a minute to get to know them, but there are some basics I like at least try to hold on to.
Yeah.
Right. Or if I forget, it's like, okay, forgive me. I feel like there's something about your brother, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Sometimes I do have to go back, especially if I've been seeing them for a while, because I talk about family situation at kind of the beginning. And if we kind of get into other things, eventually we have to come back around and have to ask
Yeah.
for to clarify and help me remember that.
and there's a difference between that and having a therapist you feel like is not listening to
Mhm.
anything you're saying, right? Or feeling like they're forgetting like the core things that we're talking about. I actually recently had a client say that they had gone to a couples counselor who that was their experience. They felt like the second session, even maybe the third session, it was like we had to just like keep saying the same things over and over again because she
Mhm.
wasn't taking any notes. She wasn't
Mm.
retaining any of the information. Not saying you have to take notes, but like
You have to
if
be
you're
able
not going
to
to take notes,
you've gotta
you
remember.
have to remember some of
Yeah.
these things, right? That they ended up stopping going to this therapist because it was frustrating. It didn't feel like she was invested.
Yeah. I mean, when you come to your next session, you're just kind of hoping that you're gonna start back where you left off, right?
Yeah.
Because the whole point is to make progress, to move
Yeah.
forward. And so if we're having to essentially keep rehashing the same thing over and over again,
Yeah.
keeping in mind that if you're not coming in regularly,
Mm,
that is gonna make it hard for the therapist,
totally.
right? I have certain boundaries around how frequently my clients have to come in because for me, I don't see anybody less than twice a month because
Hmm.
if you're coming in once a month or less, every time you're coming in, you're giving me an update.
Yeah.
And that's where we are chit-chatting.
Yeah.
We're not doing therapy.
Yeah.
So,
Totally. I think that there's a difference between forgetting the kinds of details like, I can't remember your dog's name, right?
mhm,
Or like kind of surface details versus like, wait, what are we working on?
uh,
Right? Like
yep.
I think here maybe we're looking more at nuance of like, do you feel like your therapist is invested in you and in your life? Or does it feel like you constantly have to like retell important
You
aspects of what you're working on in therapy?
Yeah, they tell us in school we shouldn't be working harder than our clients, but I would go as far as to say that our clients shouldn't be working harder than us
No.
either.
Yeah. It should definitely feel balanced. And we have different jobs, right? But it
Right.
should feel balanced in how that
Yeah.
goes.
Yeah.
Um,
I wanna go back to this distracted
yeah.
one.
Yeah. Tell me what you're thinking.
Well, your therapist shouldn't be on their phone.
Oh my gosh. I can't believe how many times I've heard of that happening.
Yeah, like,
That's
they
bad.
shouldn't be texting, they shouldn't be looking at their phone. I mean, I usually leave my phone at my desk that's
Mhm.
away from my chair. Occasionally, I'll get it up to show a picture or something. I think there was one time I had to tell a client that, like, I had kind of, like, a weird thing going on with my kids and that
Yeah.
I was gonna have to check my watch and make sure that I wasn't hearing from them, but that's not something that should be happening
A
regularly.
one-off situation like that is entirely different than
Yeah.
what I've heard happening before. I have heard of a therapist answering a phone call, like a chit-chatty phone
A
call
chit-chatty, not an
in a session, not
emergency.
an emergency phone call, right? Because those happen. I've had that happen before in a session where I had my
To
nan
you?
as the therapist,
Just
I
as a
had
therapist.
yeah, I keep my phone on do not disturb all day. Once I'm at work,
Mhm.
I don't have things come through. So if a phone call comes through, they've had to have called 3 or 4 times for it to come through.
Yeah.
And it was my babysitter. And so I was like, I can't apologize enough. I'm so sorry. I have to take this, right?
Yeah.
Because it's
Yeah.
my kids. But that's happened one time
Yeah.
in the however many years I've been doing this. It's not a regular occurrence for me to be texting in
Yeah.
session. It's crazy that I've
Yeah.
heard that that happens.
I know some therapists will use, like, an iPad to take notes, so, that's fine as
Yeah.
long as you feel like they're engaged, like, and they're not back there playing Candy Crush or something.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how else we would maybe be distracted if they're just not paying attention, but yeah, I guess those are kinda the only things that, like,
Mostly.
that shouldn't be happening.
Yeah. I mean, I do use an iPad to take notes, but I really try to limit I don't really have that many apps like on my
Mhm.
iPad, so it's not like I'm getting notifications or like again, it's on do not disturb. So I'm not really getting and receiving things. If I do have to look something up, like sometimes I have my clients do some like watercolor or they're journaling. If I'm going to do something else on my iPad, it's usually related to their chart. Like, hey, right now I'm not texting. I just want you to know I'm going to send you this link that we just talked
Yeah.
about, right? Like, I occasionally do that, but it's still related
To
to
the session.
the session and their chart or their case. And I let them know, like, that
This is
while
what
you're
we're
doing this
doing.
journaling, I'm just letting you know. Like, if you see me doing stuff, I'm just sending you this blog post that we
Yeah.
talked about.
Yeah. So,
That's crazy.
don't be distracted,
No.
therapists.
Consistently, I do wanna talk about being, like, consistently late, therapists who show up consistently late or, like, cancel a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Um
I mean, I'll be honest, this is kind of I do go over my sessions pretty regularly. I feel
Mhm,
bad about it. I've been trying to it's something I'm always working on
mm,
because it's like if I'm late with one, then I have to be late with the others
yeah,
because like so if my first session is over, I'm just screwed for the rest of the day because I want
right,
to make sure that I'm giving my clients the
the
time,
full time.
right? And so this is a struggle for me, to be
I
honest.
think I hear that. And I also run over on my sessions. Sometimes I start a few minutes late, depending on the session before. I think I hold that in a separate box in my mind than like arriving late,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
Consistently, like they're not even at the office and they're showing up late,
Yeah.
or consistently canceling for one thing or another.
That one bugs me.
That's happened to me before, that, cancellation here and there. And they always seem to be like an emergency thing.
Yeah.
But and I'm understanding, but a lot of times that would happen and I'm like, I really needed a session today, like so
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah.
And I know that life happens, but it did when it starts to be like consistently canceling a
Yeah.
lot, it really started to shake some of the like I was surprised. I was surprised how
Mhm.
much it shook some of the safety and like trust in the relationship, because
Yeah.
it removed some of the consistency. And it was another like I don't know, it really grounded in for me, like the importance of a therapist being
Yeah.
consistent, especially for trauma work.
Yes. Yes. And like I haven't had any of those kind of experiences, but I've heard of them. I know somebody who made an appointment, they canceled with that person, they made a second appointment, and then the person came and the therapist didn't show up. And then they gave up on therapy. So, like, yeah,
I
that
mean,
sucks.
I think this is like with anything, there's room in here for people to be human, right? Like
Yeah.
I have there have been very few times I've been running late to get to the office, and I send a message to my client and let
Mhm.
them know, right? Like I do everything I can to communicate about it, and it's
Yeah.
not a pattern for me to
Yeah.
show up late or to cancel for willy-nilly, right?
Yeah.
I take that really seriously as a trauma therapist. So,
Well,
yeah, our next thing was how to check a therapist's license.
yeah, well, I think these other things, I think that was kind of the meat of what we were wanting to talk about. But so briefly, like you can check a therapist's license. All
Mhm.
you have to do, I mean, it's a good guess that you can go to psychologytoday.com
Mhm.
and all therapist licenses are on there. I did run into somebody who actually didn't have their license on there. I don't
How
know
did they
how
get
that
their
happened.
profile verified?
I do not know.
Hmm.
So I don't know if you can like hide it from view or not. But all you really need to do, because you can take the license number and put it into the database
Yeah.
in your state.
Yes.
They have it very is state by state, or you can put their name in the database and it'll show you. Keep in mind, at least in Utah's, the way that it works is that I had an associate license. And when I moved from an associate license to a fully licensed therapist, I actually have two on there.
Mhm.
And one of them says that it's been, I think, superseded.
Superseded.
Keep that in mind that if it seems kind of funky, that you
Yeah.
probably need to look through the names again to
Yeah.
find the one that is fully licensed. But it will tell you if that person is, what are the other
Has any
things that
disciplinary action, most likely would be like on probation for
on
something.
probation.
And if they have had disciplinary action from their licensing board, that the documents and all the information about it is public information, and it'll be attached right there when you look up their
Database.
license. Yeah. So that's, I mean, obviously not going to be a guarantee, because not every bad therapist has been reported and had disciplinary action taken. Not
Right.
every bad therapist who's been reported has had disciplinary action taken. So
Mhm.
it's not going to be like a foolproof way to know, but it is something that you can look and say, like, oh, okay, well, at least their license is in good standing. Or you
Yeah.
look someone up and realize, like, oh, they're on probation. I wonder what for, right?
Yeah.
And you can read all of that
Yeah,
information on
and
there.
make a more informed decision on who you're seeing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So do that. I suggest that to people all the time. I don't think
Oh,
most people even know they can do that.
no, I don't think so either. We have in here, like maybe mentioning that someone who's pre licensed or an intern, it's okay to see them as long as they have a supervisor, right?
Yes.
I supervise interns at my practice.
Mhm.
If you are going to work with an intern, there's really like not all interns are created equal. I've seen some interns who are really incredible and some who feel really new, right? Like
Mhm.
it's entirely based on that person. But you want to, if they're going to put you with an intern, you should be informed about that.
Yeah.
If they're not going to be a fully licensed therapist, you should be informed that they are under supervision. If they don't let you know about that, that's something to maybe bring up with the practice
Yeah.
or the agency, and let them know, like, hey, I was not informed about this person being an intern. I like them, whatever happened, but
There
you
needs to be
should
informed
be
consent.
informed as the client if you're seeing someone who's not fully
I mean,
licensed.
that's the first thing, honestly, they should say when you sit down in session, right? Because
Mhm.
we are required to go over what you've signed, which includes, confidentiality says that what we talk about in here stays in here. Caveat to that is if I'm an intern or associate, that I will be talking to my supervisor potentially about our sessions.
Yeah.
And if they're not saying that little tidbit, there's not informed consent.
Yeah, absolutely. So, interns and associates can be a really, really good option. Sometimes interns have low cash pay rates, so it's a good option if you
Yeah.
can't
Hmm.
necessarily afford, full
Yeah.
cash pay for
And
somebody.
when I was an intern, I actually came out of school with probably more training than a lot.
Mhm.
So there can be interns that do have a good idea or handle on what they're doing.
Yeah.
But you can always ask them, like,
Hmm.
are you an intern, an associate, or fully licensed? The difference between those things are an intern is still in school being supervised. An associate has graduated and are working towards full licensure hours, and then
Hmm.
fully licensed is they don't have
Independent.
to be supervised anymore.
If you have a complaint, so if you have experienced something you felt was harmful or inappropriate or unethical, you can go to your licensing board. Here in Utah, it's DOPL, DOPL. And I think it's right there on the homepage that you can file a complaint,
Mm.
that you give the information of the therapist, give your information, and you get to write a little summary of, what your complaint or your report is, and then it sends it off to them. Beyond that point, I have no idea what their requirements are or criteria on whether they open an investigation into it or not, but you are always welcome to file a
Yeah.
complaint with the licensing board.
I think it's always important that if you feel good enough to do that, to do it, because even if nothing is opened up, there's a paper trail. Eventually, the hope is that eventually something will change.
Yeah.
I've had lots of clients who have told me about some of the experience that they've had with certain therapists, and I've had to inform them that they can report them.
Yeah.
They didn't know.
Yeah, there absolutely is a way to do that. So if you feel like you've been harmed by a therapist, you are always welcome to make a
Yeah.
report.
Do you know if those are anonymous? Does the DOPL let the therapist know who the report was done by?
I don't know. I want to say that there could be the option of being anonymous, but if they're going to investigate it, there's a possibility that whoever was reported could figure it out based on the
Mhm.
questions they're being asked. Or I don't know if you can always guarantee anonymity when it
Yeah.
comes to an investigation being opened.
Which is kind of what makes it even more difficult for people to report,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. So I don't know. I want to say that they'll say, like, we can keep you anonymous.
If it
I don't
goes past
know.
this point
Yeah.
or
I don't know
whatever.
if I would plan on it being anonymous if they really go into like an investigation.
Yeah. Well, that's something to keep in mind.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the step by step of that is just to go to the website and just go through the form.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that the more that people are willing to say something, we protect, right? Like we've had in the past year here in Utah, there have actually been several things that have come out. Unfortunately, Doppel hasn't really shown up
Yeah.
in the way that us ethical therapists want them to. And what's come out are criminal charges that have essentially done what we hoped Doppel would do, which was
Yeah.
make them unable to practice therapy anymore.
Yeah. Just
So
sometimes like 10 years too late.
I mean, on some level that helps eventually, but yeah, it's okay to do that. Just know that you have a lot of therapists
Mm.
that back you up
Mm.
in doing that.
So with that, like we still, well, this doesn't need to be all like doom and gloom. There are definitely some like sketchy therapists out there, but there are also a lot of really good therapists who,
Yeah.
are doing their best, really care, make mistakes, but, have good client care and ethics as their priority. If you've been unsure about therapy, you've had a bad experience in therapy, it's, we'd encourage you to like try again.
Mhm.
And like Kayla said, really do some like legwork on doing some consultations ahead of time before you actually start therapy
Yeah.
with somebody. I don't think it's a great sign if a therapist doesn't offer a consultation option,
Yeah.
because I think a client or a therapist that cares about good fit is going to want to do a consultation
Yeah.
anyway.
And I don't know how you do those consultations. I know that the way that I approach is I talk about some of the logistical things, but then I say, listen, like, why don't you share with me what you're wanting to address? And then I will tell you how I would approach that.
Yeah.
And then you can decide if that's the approach that you're looking for.
Yeah, that's really good. I actually
So-
have not figured out a good way to structure those consultation calls very well. So,
Yeah. I
That's
talk
helpful.
about payment, rents and stuff, scheduling, because
Mhm.
if our schedules, like if they need something on the weekend, I'm not,
yeah.
let's end the conversation here.
Yeah.
And then I tell them how I would address their issues.
Yeah. Yeah. That actually sounds a lot like how they go. I just haven't really thought of it in a structured way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
If you feel like something is off, it probably is.
Trust your gut.
I don't know what more to say
Yeah.
about that.
I
Like,
think that that's really good.
pay attention to it. Like, if it feels wonky, then it's probably wonky. Like, because I don't know, just I hope that we're making it clear that if you're meeting outside of the therapeutic room, problem, right?
Yeah.
I know that there are some therapists that are doing like walk and talk therapy now or
Sure.
equine therapy. Is
Sure.
that how you say it?
Yeah. Equine. I say equine,
Equine.
but who knows?
Like there are some of those therapeutic things that are happening and kind of changing now, which I think is really exciting. But if we're not talking about your process
Mm.
and doing therapy, it's probably over the
That's a
line.
red flag. Yeah, for sure. And you can, if you have questions or if you're not sure about something, like ask someone.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
Ask a friend, talk to somebody and like, does your therapist do this? Like
Yeah.
sometimes it's good to bounce ideas off of other people and see like what's normal and what's not
Yeah.
normal.
Yeah. I would even go as far as to say maybe not every therapist would be okay with this, but if I had a random person that sent me an email and said, "Hey, I just wanted to check with another therapist. This is what's going on."
Mm,
Then I would be open to giving some direction of like, yeah, that seems a little bit off.
totally.
Maybe ask these questions.
Yeah, that's a
Like I
great
think I
idea.
would be open to somebody because if you don't feel okay to ask around or check, I mean,
Yeah.
at this point you could probably ask ChatGPT and
That's a really good point.
go Google it.
Yeah.
So
No, absolutely. All of the discipline's code of ethics are available online, right? Like if
yeah.
you really wanted to dig into looking at your therapist's credentials and go find the code of ethics for that
Hmm.
discipline, you can read through the
Yeah.
guidelines that they're supposed to live by.
By following.
Yeah.
Okay, so find a good fit.
Mhm.
There's a spectrum of different types of therapists, whether it's the right fit, not maybe super educated on your issue
Mhm.
or just pure, straightforward, unethical
Yeah.
therapists. So keep that in mind. But therapy is good. Find a
Therapy
good
is great.
therapist. Check out the red flags. Make sure that when you're going in there, maybe go in with some intention of making sure you're paying attention to those things. Look up the therapist license.
Absolutely. And trust your gut.
Sure
And
gut.
if it doesn't feel like it's working for you, that's okay. It's okay to move on. Okay.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to No Couch Required. We'd love to keep the conversation going with you. Connect with us on Instagram at No Couch Required Pod and let us know your thoughts. If you have questions or topics you'd like us to cover in future episodes, send them our way. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're enjoying the podcast, please make sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And consider leaving us a review. It really helps others find the show. We'll see you at our next episode.